Welcome, everyone, to this new series I'm going to try to do once every week or two, called Stories from the Bible. Now, the first one that I picked is a very gory story, and I would recommend that if you're squeamish, that you do not watch this video. However, the reason I am bringing this particular study up, this particular thing that happened in the Bible, this particular dark story, is to show that the Bible does not hide anything. We'll see some of the stories where David, a great king, his sin is exposed before all to see. God is not afraid to show the faults that are in the people. All right, so the Bible is true and it does not hide things. It's not like the news where we've seen some people who have done things to women and children, and they defend them for a long period and try to cover it up until those particular people wind up getting exposed and losing the show. And some of them probably don't even get exposed. That's how bad it is. But the Bible exposes its own. And the particular story about here, this particular horror story, is a story that shows the need, when there's lawlessness everywhere, to do something about it. And sometimes we have that in our nation now. There's a lot of lawlessness going on. And there's going to come to a point, probably like this story, that something is going to be so bad that it'll come up. So here's the story, and here's how it starts. There was a Levite man, which would be considered like a priest in the Catholic Church, or probably an under elder in a church today, in a Protestant church. And in that day, he had a wife and a concubine. Now, this concubine basically is a second wife, but not the first wife. And we can look at that today and say that's ridiculous. But the thing is, there was not enough resources. So men would take many concubines in many cases. Not that the Bible ever wanted that, but they would take many and they would care for them in a sense. Now, this particular Levite seems to be a pretty good guy, except for some of the traditions around there and how they treated women, because they were treated like property, which we're going to see in this particular story. Horrible story. But the man did the right thing. And yet it's a horrible story again, what he did. All right, so this man has a concubine, and he was good to her, and she runs off, and she plays the harlot. And I guess, she went around and slept around, and at some point, she realized, you know what, I can't do it on my own. I'm going to go back to my dad's house. So he went back to the dad's house. She went back to the dad's house. The Levite missed her and liked her, and about 4 months went by, and he must have got word that she was there, and he went back to the father's house to claim her. And he comes in, he knocks on the door, and the man says to him, "Oh, I'm glad you're here. Come in, come in." Obviously, he really loved this man. And they sat down, and every day he was going to leave the next day, take the daughter, and go back to his town. And the man said, no, stay another day. And they ate, and they drank, and they made merry. And then it went on a second day, the same thing. And the man says, no. Then a third day. And then a fourth day. And then on the fifth day, the man says to him, "Look, I really have to go, but I'll go later in the day." And they sat down, they made merry, they stood together and had a good time. They hit it off. Eventually, he gets the concubine, and he gets it and begins to go on a journey. Now, he's not going alone. He's got some servants with him, helping him go back on this particular journey. At this point, I guess the concubine didn't mind going anymore. I think she might have found life pretty rough, and her father was probably older. And, so they make their way back. But the problem was, because he stood so late with the man again, and made his journey. They didn't make quite enough of a distance to get back to the place that they had come from. So the servant says to him, you know what? The Jebusites are over here. We can go in there and we can get rest. There'll be places to live and stuff. Now, probably this is a pagan land of Jebusites. The Levites saying, I don't want to go in that particular land, because if I go in that particular land, they worship idols there, and there's a lot of crime there too. So I don't know if I really want to go into a pagan land. So he goes, no, we will go on, and we will go into Gebali in Benjamin, in the tribe of Benjamin. But when they went in, there was nothing open, and there was no place to go. Now, I hate to say this because I couldn't say this before, but we've seen pictures, and I've been in some towns, even in Florida, where I would not want to be on the streets at night, even though a few years ago it was a safe place to be. But if you think of Los Angeles with all of the tent cities there, this man cannot find a place to stay because all the places were full. So he decides, well, I'm going to stay on the street. But with that, there was an old man coming from his job. He oversaw a field, and he saw them in the street, and he's saying, no, you can't stay in the street, realizing what would happen. So the man says to him, come with me. I will put you up in my house. Now, here's another thing you got to understand with the people of the Middle East, some even today. If you ask, or if they invite you into their house, you are sheltered by them, and they will give up their life to protect you. That is what they're supposed to do. In fact, I know from tradition, even in Muslim countries, if you are a Christian fleeing to them and ask them to provide for them, they must provide for you. And this has gotten some of the Muslims killed, because if they were going to be following what Allah said to house you in, the radicals may kill that whole family because they hid you there and fed you. This is a real tight requirement of that culture. So the old man brings him into the house, being aware of the danger and trying to protect them. And as the old man was caring for them and providing for them, all of a sudden, a bunch of men that were in the street, and who knows, women, were bashing onto the door, and they demanded for that man to come out so that we could know him. So they saw the man, they saw the woman, they saw the servants, but they wanted the rich man. They wanted him to come out so they can know him. I can only imagine what this would mean. And it would not mean the safety of this man. The man would be over. So the old man tries to hold off the attackers, and he appeases them, and he offers them, look, I'll give you my daughter. Take my daughter. So the Levite, thinks about it and says, no, I'm not going to send your daughter. Let me do this. I'll send out my concubine. Now, this doesn't make any sense to any of us, rather than, to fight them off. But in our day, it makes no sense. I think this man loved this concubine, but yet he sends her out. He convinces them to take her. So they go to bed, which I don't know how this man can sleep while this woman is out there with all these men. So the night he goes to sleep, and in the morning they come to the door and open it, and the man tries to lift his concubine, and she is dying. she can't make it. He tries to revive her, and eventually she dies. So now he has this woman on his transportation, his mule, his donkey, whatever it is, and he's going back. Now, in Israel, there were 12 tribes. This tribe of Benjamin had gotten so out of hand, there was no law and order anymore, that he decides this woman is not going to die in vain. And so what he does is, I don't know what he used, but he cuts her into 12 pieces. He packages the 12 pieces and he sends them out to the 12 tribes of Israel. They go out and he says, not such a thing has been done in Israel since Israel came into existence. What is going on? What are we going to do about it? And he sends the parcels out throughout the country. What a horrible story. Well, the reaction probably was this, because they amass an army. What in the world is going on in Israel? It awakened to them the fact that because they had left God, and this is in Judges 19, because they left God, God left them. And everybody does what's right in their own eyes. And people don't care and don't see it. Do we see the same thing in our country today? But when this goes out, these parcels, it awakens 11 of the tribes. The 12th tribe, Benjamin, apparently didn't think much about it. And what winds up happening is when they go into battle over this, it's almost like a mini civil war. It was trying to get justice into Benjamin. And thousands of people died because they lost 2 times to Benjamin. Finally, they had a victory. And in a sense, some justice was revived. People called on God to bail them out because of what is going on. We need this in our country today. You know, when somebody can look at evil and say it is just, there's a problem. Either God's got to work in them, or we got to shock them to the truth somehow. You know, back I think it was the 80s, there was a lot of carjackings happening in Miami. Finally, one day, an innocent reporter from another nation got killed, and the story got out. And guess what? They shut it down right away. For crime to go away, the people got to wake up. And sometimes, unfortunately, it takes a poor woman like this to be killed and quartered in multiple ways to save and bring back justice. So, with a heavy heart, this is a difficult story to bear. But it's in the Word of God, and it's there for you to look. And there are many more stories like this. Fortunately, I'm going to do a lot of good stories too. But this one I felt needed to be addressed for today so that you can understand the horror when evil is unleashed. So until next time, may Jesus richly work in you. May he increase as we decrease.